I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that we're trying to get rolling in the prairie organic sector to try to keep up with demand. Before I get into the nitty-gritty on some of those, I will talk a little bit about that demand picture and sort of the path to where we are today. So let me run right into that. And for those of you that don't know what we do at Grain Millers, we're an oat milling company primarily. We handle other grains as well, but our bread and butter is milling oats. And we have 3 mills, one in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and 2 down in the U.S. And between the volume of those 3 plants, we've become the largest oat milling company, organic oat milling company in the world. We've seen close up the demand story, I guess, of organics. I started in 2001 with Grain Millers, and that was the first exposure that I had to organic agriculture. I grew up on a conventional farm in Saskatchewan, didn't really know much about organic ag. What I soon came to learn about organic agriculture was how fast it was growing, and that was through first-hand challenge of trying to keep the bins full for the next organic run. So we saw from 2001 through to 2008 pretty much 15 to 20% growth annually. Every year, 15 to 20% growth, just exponential. Of course, 08 and 09 came along with the recession, and we saw a slight contraction in the market, and that hit prices and everything hard, as you all, any producers in the room would know well. Looking back on it, it's interesting to know that the contraction in the marketplace, at least looking at our volumes, was actually only about 4 to 5% annually. So that's not good, but when you hold that up against the growth that we've seen before and now since, it's no small wonder that the market's recovered fairly quickly. Since 2010, we saw volumes recover. Prices took about another year to do that. And in 2011, we were basically back to growth of 10 to 15%, and it's continued to this day. Even this year, for example, our sales guys were receiving projections from many of our large customers that were kind of projecting a plateau, and that's kind of the Kool-Aid we were all drinking and planning for through the first half of the year. But every organic run would go by, and it would be bigger than the last, and it wouldn't be smaller than normal. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, you know, the crop year's over and we've got another double-digit growth year, so on the organic side. So that's kind of a little look at a local level from one perspective. When you look at a national level, I'm borrowing a lot of these figures from CODA, from Matt and the gang there, but nationally, we've got a $72 billion, globally, we have a $72 billion market. That's according to CODA. We have a $4 billion market here at home for organic foods. That's the 5th largest in the world. And our exports are currently valued at a little more than $500 million. We got about 2.2 million acres of organic farmland, and greater than 20 million Canadians buy organic products every week. We've also got word that 98% of Canadian consumers plan to increase or at least maintain organic consumption. You look through the news almost every week, and there's somebody in the organic sector expanding or planning for expansion. This last week was no exception. The largest organic pork producer in the world, named DuBreton, I think based in Quebec, announced plans to add 300,000 animals a year, organic pork, within the next 3 years. So it's just everywhere you look nationally, it's a story about growth. Consumption here in Canada is projected to reach 5% of the food market by 2018. That's huge. And when you look actually a little bit even bigger than that, you look at the Organic Trade Association stats from the U.S., probably our closest trading partner. They have a $36 billion U.S. market, so that's half of that global market, right south of our 49th. Over the next 15 years, OTA projects sales in organics in the U.S. alone to reach $90 billion annually. So That's a 10% market penetration is what they're projecting. So they're embarking on a plan, kind of much like I'll explain that we are up in Canada, to try to align that supply and demand picture. They aim to triple organic production by 2030. And make no mistake, we here in Canada are a huge part of servicing that market. Nobody is better positioned to capitalize on that, arguably even including US domestic producers, just because of the vast amounts of corn and soybean acres, and mostly GMO, that eat up the acreage down there. So we sit in a pretty good position. So we've got to grow to keep up with demand. In fact, probably the biggest threat to continued momentum in this marketplace is stagnation that would come from not being able to keep up on the supply side. So it's a little counterintuitive sometimes, the message to producers that we need more supply, we need to bring new suppliers into this market. That's going to create competition for the grower. But this is a kind of a unique situation where if we don't do that, a lack of being able to keep up with demand means the demand just either won't proliferate or it will look elsewhere. It'll look for imports, and once you establish programs in some of these other countries, once they're growing it, they can keep growing it, and so a lot of times it's important just to forestall that from happening. The other thing about really tight supplies is simply the volatility and sort of the prohibitive pricing that can come into play, and can really end up keeping processors or food companies from pulling the trigger on what they were thinking. So I know it's not that far, but you think about 2008 and 2009, and I guess in some respects even 2010, depending what market you're looking at, we're not that far away from contraction and really tough times, and a fairly sizable exodus of organic growers from the supply side, and that's part of the reason we're in the pickle we're in today. But I think it's important to note that it looks like that's behind us. I remember sitting at a meeting or a networking session or something like that in Regina in 2009, right in the teeth of this contraction, and Matt Holmes from CODA was addressing the crowd, talking about how we needed to add more growers, and everybody was like rolling their eyes and scoffing. But the point I make is that there's some pretty solid thinkers and vision, and Matt, like many of the other people smarter than me, I was probably one of those people that was scoffing that was on the money. So we're past that, and really about the only threat such as that, other than our own ability to keep up to demand, the only threat would be something macroeconomic like the US housing collapse that kind of brought the recession the last time. When you look at and when you look around the world at what could cause something like that, we need to acknowledge, I think, that China is slowing down, but I think the rest of the world would kill for China's slow GDP growth. It's, they're north of 5%. So I don't think, while that might have ripples, that doesn't have, foundational ramifications. The EU is sputtering, but they're starting to have accommodative policy and sort of getting away from austerity, and that worked pretty well in the US. There's every reason to believe they can turn that around. All in all, I think we can rule out large macroeconomic issues that would cut us off at the knees these days. So about the only thing that might stop this thing is the apocalypse then. And I guess if Donald Trump is still leading in the polls in 2 months, we got to maybe start planning for that too. Anyways, we're seeing very steady growth of existing customers that are already majors in this industry. We're also seeing every year other food companies, some of them very large companies that don't now have a presence in organics, and they're interested. They see what the consumer is asking for, and they're either bringing on new products and new SKUs, or in the case of somebody like a General Mills, they're buying existing organic companies and lending their marketing weight and whatnot behind them to grow that sector. So their major concern, and ours by extension is supply. So when you put that against the backdrop as well of in the last 3 years, there's really been no increase in organic farmers in the prairie. So I think we're just starting to see some, or hear some new names, like as we sit at our desks at work and get calls from guys we've never met before. So we're starting to maybe see a little bit of momentum there. But over the last 3 years, it's just been net flat. So how do we get to this supply? I mean, that's basically probably the fundamental issue facing the sector right now. And I guess when we stop to assess what or how we get there, I'll start with the conclusions that a lot of us came to, and before I get into sort of the mechanisms. So basically, when we talk about the conclusions that we made through this sort of assessment phase that we went through, basically it starts at the grassroots level, and it's kind of a three-pronged approach, and it's better organizing the sector, and it's better funding those organizations that organize the sector. And I think it's important to note that the first of those things probably can't happen without the second. And it's developing and implementing initiatives that are designed to deliver organic farmers what they need to succeed, the tools to succeed. And that could be existing farmers or potential farmers as well. So how did we get there? I think there were a lot of smart people that were a long ways along the curve before we did this, but in January of 2014, so it's going on 2 years now, Sask Organics, then SOD, organized a workshop, a 2-day thing in Fort Qu'Appelle, Saskatchewan. There's people at my table from Fort Qu'Appelle. I thought I'd hear something there. It's beautiful, exactly. They organized a 2-day workshop as a really broad cross-section of the industry. There's farmers, there's processors, buyers, traders, certifiers, and basically they locked the doors and kept everybody in the room and went through this laborious process of figuring out how to, and the focus of that was how to revitalize SOD, Sask Organics. What we came to realize after we broke from that, having identified 7 key priority action items, and struck working groups to deal with each of those items, it became very apparent that SOD was a microcosm of the prairie sector. And so what we needed to do to revitalize SOD is really what we needed to do to revitalize or to keep up in the whole prairie sector. So there were 2 of those action items that were really fundamental, and that was that reorganization piece and the funding piece. And there were 5 other identified items that were kind of more tactical. Outreach type stuff, R&D, those types of things that kind of got rolled up now. And both of these, the 2 fundamental things kind of got rolled up in the 1 initiative that we're working on now, and the 5 tactical as well as some other stuff got rolled up in the other one. So one is called the Prairie Organic Development Fund, that aims to reorganize and fund. And the other is called the Prairie Organic Growth Initiative, and that aims to deliver those needs to those producers. So one of those people, by the way, that was along the curve and spent a lot of work on some of this stuff, I think long before a lot of us had even seen it, has already been mentioned a couple of times, but Laura Telford, and some of her counterparts at the other provincial government levels we're kind of already here. They were just waiting for us to catch up. So that Fort Qu'Appelle meeting kind of served to try to bridge some of those old gaps, and consensus was reached that how you do that is you need to strengthen those provincial organics sector organizations like MOA here tonight, and this wonderful event to help fill the coffers of MOA and that kind of thing. We need to strengthen those provincial organizations so that they can advocate and assist growers, communicate to all the stakeholders, and then also to have that arm to organize and execute those tactical initiatives. And in turn, those initiatives then, as they succeed, it becomes a virtuous circle. They further strengthen and make credible those provincial organizations. So, as well, those prairie organizations also, we kind of identified, there's so many synergies with those organizations. They're, by and large, the issues across the prairies are the same, or very similar. And so those three organizations, Sask Organics, MOA, and Organic Alberta, need to find those areas where they can work together and share resources and not duplicate work and research and all of those things. So that was kind of the focus then of the Prairie Organic Development Fund. It became known as. So what is the Prairie Organic Development Fund? It's an umbrella organization, and this is really the sexy part of the talk. It's when you start talking about administrative bodies and umbrella organizations. More wine, please. But it's designed to raise industry funds and funnel them to support the sector. And with that, it has two main goals, and that's to provide that base funding for those prairie organizations, a chunk of that funding that can help them focus on delivering deliverables instead of keeping the lights on, stuff like that. And it's designed to provide project funding directly to sector initiatives, R&D, market development, those types of things. Other models were explored. We looked at stuff like a grain checkoff, a certification charge administered by the certifying bodies. SOD came up with a model that would have a trade certificate that you would have to buy to sell organic grain or whatever in Saskatchewan. We felt like all of those things had significant headwinds when it came to either regulatory acceptance or just stakeholder acceptance. The certifying body surcharge, for example, none of the certifying bodies want to do it. It's a ton of work for them to try to manage it. So we came back around to this POTF model where basically it's industry money coming in to help fund these initiatives. And there may be merit yet in exploring down the road some of these other options, a checkoff or accessing existing checkoffs for organic research or that type of thing. But the fastest and most effective way to get there was to strike within the industry because, as I mentioned about the demand, everyone in the industry is very mindful of these issues. Everyone in the industry stays up nights wondering if they've got enough of their whatever grain they buy out in those bins and how to get it and those types of things. So it was the right time to be making those solicitations. So, the nice thing about that too is it's industry money, but it's not solely governed by industry. The POTF board is actually a cross section, so there's 3 reps on the board from the provincial organizations, 1 from each. There's 3 funding reps, no more than one from a given company, and there's 3 farmers, 1 from each province, as well as an organic researcher and the 3 government representatives on the board. The government reps can't vote, but their wisdom and intellect is sought for that table. So there's more fundraising that we do need to do at POTF, no question. But we got to a point, probably 8 or 10 months ago, where we had enough and we had some momentum that we knew, all right, we've got something viable here. And since that time, work at POTF has mostly been spent establishing POTF. There's, again, Laura did yeoman's work writing policy and bylaws and all that establishment work. So it's been a really a laborious but a fun effort. And since June, POTF has been incorporated as a nonprofit. We had our first members and board meetings, official members and board meetings about a month ago. And so kind of we can switch focus again at POTF back to raising more money. So hitting up more of those companies that haven't had us darken their door just yet, and get them writing checks. When I mentioned what POTF does, so it funnels money to the organic provincial associations. The other piece of that was to fund directly initiatives, tactical initiatives in the sector. And that's where the other initiative that I just wanted to touch on tonight comes in, and that's the Prairie Organic Growth Initiative. It's been mentioned a few times that that's a rather unfortunate acronym. You say it's POGI, but there was some emails that went around looking for other options. It just comes back to Prairie Organic Growth Initiatives, what it's got to be. So, at any rate, POGI now is underway. It's an initiative that's led by the folks at Organic Alberta, or administered by the folks at Organic Alberta, but it's a real pan-prairie initiative, and they're working closely with stakeholders from across the prairies on it. Its vision is to achieve resiliency and stability in the prairie organic sector by focusing on increasing the quantity and quality of organic grains and developing relationships across organic market value chains, and to increase the number of organic acres devoted to organic production on the prairies by 15% by Jan 2019 in order to meet market demand. So it's lofty, there's lofty goals, and when I first talked to Becky Lipton at Organic Alberta, or when she first talked to me, I guess, about POGI, it was, there was a little bit of that this all sounds great, but how the heck are you gonna do all of that? This thing is very broad. And basically, I guess I want to talk to you a little bit about how they do plan to achieve that, not kind of just get lost. By the way, it's funded partially by the federal government and the rest by industry, with money funneling through POTF, and some direct money from some companies as well. It's set to run for 4 years right now. I'm not sure at the end of 4 years if there will be a POGI 2 or that kind of thing, but at any rate, that's sort of the outlook right now. To try to eat such a big elephant, it's important to try to do it one bite at a time, and I think the way that they're trying to do that is by splitting the program into 3 main streams, and those streams are focused on new grower transition, on optimization, and on market development. Now, before I dive into a little bit into each stream, just a bit about the process, and so each stream has an advisory committee, and those advisory committees are cross sections of the industry as well. Just almost, if you see the phone ringing from Becky Lipton, she's probably going to ask you to sit on one of those advisory committees. It's a very discussion and consensus-based model, and those advisory committees are there to provide ongoing guidance to the actual implementation teams, and to set those priority areas where the initiative should look at within each of those streams. Then within each of those streams and projects, there's project teams that are then responsible for the management, the hands-on management of the project, and the implementation, development, that type of thing. So there's a bit of a process there before any POGI, any specific POGI step reaches the marketplace or goes live, so to speak. It's a bit of a process of back and forth between the advisory committee and the planning committee and some other stakeholders and that kind of thing to finally drill down to a plan that's going to work. So people, if we're talking, for example, about a long-term rotational study, Martin Entz might be asked about for input on that, and so that when you get there, you're not just trying to do something that isn't going to work. So I'll be honest, from some skeptical outlook of whether something as broad as POGI could be done, I mean, I've become a believer that Becky and the team and everybody there are going to drive it. So again, those 3 streams are new grower transition, optimization, and market development. And a little bit about new grower transition. The mission there is to promote organic farming by addressing farmers' barriers to transition, highlighting the benefits and making organics desirable, and to change negative perceptions by educating, engaging, and addressing misconceptions. So there's kind of some core values with that, and those are rooted in respect and a sort of a focus on the fact that we are all farmers and that we aren't there. The organic sector, POGI, isn't there to throw conventional farmers under the bus. We respect their techniques. We offer another choice is kind of the message. No holier than thou attitude. And increasingly, honestly, we don't have to bash, we don't have to carry that message. The consumer is voting with his dollar. We see a lot of stuff on the internet and whatnot every week that's, you know, if you talk to many conventional farmers now, it's kind of flipped 180 where honestly they feel like their model is probably more under attack. And if you go back 5-10 years, that was us, that was the organic farmer. Maybe not necessarily under attack, but certainly sneered at and belittled. And so that's one of the important parts about that is that the messaging will be on the high road, I guess. There's a target audience there that basically is a farmer that's in good financial health, is a good manager, and is willing to adapt, learn, and put more time into their farm, interested in diversification strategies, and willing to network. That guy has the mindset that organics is viable. And there's kind of 2 paradigms or 2 prototypes, I guess, of that guy that might receive this message. And one is a new generation farmer, usually somebody that's 20 to 30, 35. They've either inherited or started a farm, or they farm with their parents. Most of them are college ag certificate holders or degree holders. And they very much use new technologies and social media to learn about farming techniques. So they're very receptive and influenced by social media. The other is the very businessman-like farmer. And then, of course, all farms are businesses, but you know who I'm talking about here. You probably all have met that guy who's just laser focused on the bottom line. These guys are usually a little older than that other guy. They're motivated by the business side. They're very conscious economically. They actually are starting very skeptical of the organic business model, but they don't have a philosophical slant. So those are the guys that you make the business case to. They're listening. So the barriers to that, I mean, there's a social gap. It's a different lifestyle. I remember traveling the countryside with one of our customers a few years ago, and one of the comments that stuck out in my head as we met around the kitchen table at one of our suppliers was that he rarely sees his conventional farmers all summer. His neighbors, I mean, all summer. They're gone to the lake. They got something to do. They call the sprayer in. So it's definitely a different lifestyle. There's skepticism. There's ideology as far as barriers go. There are those guys who just aren't going to go there. There's production concerns, right? There's managing weeds and fertility and those types of things that hold guys back. There's uncertainty about markets, and I think in the last few years that should be something that that's a fairly convincing story to tell. But probably the biggest barrier is transition and kind of that 3-year period, and we hear it from suppliers as well all the time. So how the strategic messaging then to try to get to these guys is that you'll make money. You can do it, it's manageable, and we've got people and resources that can help you through it. And that's the third one, we'll guide you. And that's something you notice too at producer meetings is you go to organic producer meetings and people are sharing their practices, and you go to conventionals. It's not like it's never done, but there's more protection, I think, usually of what, if something's working for me, I'm definitely not going to tell you about it, sort of thing. So that's a look at that transition stream. The optimization stream is stream number 2, and that's the mission of that stream is to improve organic field crop quantity and quality through improved management practices, as well as to compile the latest research on organics, create resources, and train producers on how to implement best management practices. There's a whole lot going on there, and again, it's important to take that and break it down into some further streams. And those main kind of 4 areas within the optimization stream are improving soil fertility. So there will be work done on understanding the role of green manures, as well as the application of off-farm nutrients, organic inputs. And I know there's some input providers and manufacturers in the room tonight. There will be work on improving weed management, so tillage equipment and practices, looking at that stuff. Looking at cultural management practices to reduce weed pressure, so stuff like variety selection, seeding rates, seeding dates, spacing, those types of things. There will be a section of that looking at improving crop quality, so looking at post-harvest cleaning and economics, and cultural management practices, again, that would improve crop quality. And then looking at whole farm management, improving whole farm management. So understanding long-term crop rotation for nutrient budgeting and weed control and those types of things. Some inaugural activities, some of the stuff already underway under the optimization stream is they undertook an EnviroScan, they called it. And basically, I'm not sure how they did it, but they compiled a long list of research that's already out there and done, and they put it in one place, and they've started to circulate that. So that we don't start doing something that's already been published, and we know what the results will be. They'll be doing producer survey. They'll be looking for info on current practices and results and those types of things. They'll be doing a field crop handbook, almost like a recipe for this crop and that crop and the other. So they'll look at a green manure manual, and I don't know a lot about green manures other than I think there's a ton of options, and I think it can almost be overwhelming sometimes. So I think that's kind of what the focus will be there. And then they'll also look at doing an organic production conference. So something that'll go maybe hand in hand with Organic Connections, or I'm not sure. I don't know exactly when they're thinking about doing that, but it'll be more production focused instead of maybe marketing networking focused. So, and for those types of things, they'll use on-farm trials as well as third-party stuff as well. So, and then the other stream, the third stream, is the marketing stream. And the mission there to build stability and resiliency in the prairie organic sector through promoting the prairie organic brand in domestic and international markets, developing strong relationships across the value chain, and developing information infrastructure. So the key priority areas in that stream are actually not yet identified. That's the stream that hasn't done much yet. Most of the work has gone into the supply side stuff. I actually sit on that stream, and we've met once about a month ago, and we're going to meet again here mid-October to start to flesh some of that stuff out. Some of the activities that we'll use, platforms we'll use for the marketing stream will be trade shows and network shows like BioFoc and Expo East, Japan Organic, and meetings in Korea with international buyers in this October. So it's a huge, POGI is a huge undertaking, but again, it's necessary. You go back to where I started with demand. If we can succeed with the POTF effort to get enough funding from industry, stabilize those provincial organizations, and fund the POGI, the Prairie Organic Growth Initiative, I think we can start to take steps to catch up or maintain the supply along with the demand growth. So success is there if we can do this. Success is there for the taking, because you know, you can't turn that demand into growth without the supply, and that's where the efforts will be focused. One of the key things about the whole thing is trying to unify the voices in the sector. In Saskatchewan, for sure, the voice of the organic sector until more recently was extremely fragmented, and the reorganization efforts have really sought to clarify that and unify that and make an advocacy voice more credible and that type of thing. So we'd like, if you're an industry partner or stakeholder, we'd like your support for PODF. If you're a farmer, heck, we'll take checks from you too. But we definitely like your support from a moral and intellectual standpoint. If you have ideas or want to participate in some of these initiatives or efforts, you're welcome to. OrganicAlberta.org is the website for Organic Alberta, where POGI is administered. I have some cards here. If anybody wants to kind of learn how to get involved, come see me. That's all I got.